thanks the permanent delegation of the Russian Federation for requesting this urgent meeting in response to the vicious aggression committed by the U.S. administration against the territories of the Syrian Arab Republic and the Brotherly Republic of Iraq at dawn on Saturday. This aggression constitutes a threat to regional and international peace and security and a blatant violation of international law, international humanitarian law, and the principles and purposes of the United Nations. Therefore, it should be condemned and denounced by the Security Council. Madam President, the U.S. aggression led to the martyrdom of 37 civilians and military personnel and seriously injured 34 others. It led to the destruction of several civilian residential buildings, a school, and many civilian vehicles and facilities. Even historical sites were not spared from this aggression, which also targeted the ancient Al-Raba citadel. We have heard today the same flimsy pretexts and misleading claims that the U.S. administration is promoting in an attempt to justify its repeated attacks, including by presenting a distorted and wrongful interpretation of the UN Charter's provisions, especially Article 51, ignoring the fact that occupation has no right to self-defense and that the root causes of conflicts, suffering, and instability in our region are the wrongful policies and the destructive policies of the United States and its blind and unlimited support for the Israeli occupation entity and the atrocities committed by Israel, including the ongoing crime of genocide against the Palestinian people for more than 120 days. To end the suffering it is causing to Syrians as a result of its inhumane coercive measures, the plundering of national wealth, and the support it provides to terrorist organizations and separatist militias. My country also stresses that the U.S. administration must refrain from causing further escalation in our region.
In the Middle East, because Iraq is aware that the crises in the Middle East are linked. We have already cautioned against escalation and said that the recent evolution of the situation could have grave repercussions and could undermine regional international peace and security. President Iraq, in its foreign policy, carries out a balanced policy on the basis of solid relations with the regional environment and also the international community, to ensure its natural role as a leader in the region around the world. This approach is reflected in the regional and international opening of Iraq. Over the last 2 years, Iraq has been working to become a source and a factor of stability in the regional and international context, and its relations with all states and states in the region should be balanced and based on the principles of good neighborliness, mutual respect for interference and non-interference, and for futile and illogical pretexts. These attacks are violations of Iraqi sovereignty as well as territorial integrity, and it threatens its security and its people, and it runs counter to the purposes and principles of the UN Charter. Iraq rejects all types of attacks against our military bases and will not allow anyone to impose the conflict that is ravaging the region too. We will not allow Iraqi territory to be used for score settling or for policies to be rolled out. President Iraq strongly condemns the American attacks which targeted military positions in Iraq on the night of the 3rd of February and which led to dozens of deaths and martyrs amongst personnel and civilians. This is a grave attack to official Iraqi security authorities, and this is a violation of Iraq's sovereignty as well as its security, and a transgression of the laws that govern relations between states. Lastly, we reiterate the importance for the Council to shoulder its responsibilities for maintaining international peace and security and to protect the sovereignty of states and their territorial integrity, as well as to combat all violations and ensure the respect for the purposes and principles of the United Nations.
Iran strongly condemns the U.S. military attacks on Syria and Iraq territory. The U.S. military action is illegal and unjustified and blatantly violate the basic norms and principles of international law and the United Nations Charter, particularly paragraph 4 of Article 2 of the Charter. It is also a flagrant breach of Iraq and Syria territorial integrity, sovereignty, and political independence. Iran also strongly condemns the joint military action of the United States and the United Kingdom against Yemen, which constitute an obvious violation of the United Nations charters and international law. Furthermore, they have openly abused Security Council Resolution 2722. These illegal actions, which targeted civilians and vital infrastructure, jeopardize regional peace and security, as well as pose a serious threat to international peace and security. The US and UK must bear their international responsibility for their commission of the crime of aggression. The argument of justification invoking Article 51 as a basis for this aggression lacks a solid legal foundation and cannot legitimize these illegal actions. Madam President, today in this chamber, the US and UK made another desperate attempt to distract attention away from the root cause of the current situation in the region by falsely putting the finger and blame on Iran. It is regretful that the United States, a permanent member of the Security Council, has failed to fulfill its obligation under the UN Charter. The US expressed grave concern about the spillover of tension in the region while continuing to play a destabilizing role in the region. The United States continues to occupy Syrian territory, loot Syrian property and resources, and support separatist and terrorist groups. Furthermore, people in Syria are experiencing economic hardship and humanitarian crisis as a result of the United States' hostile and harmful actions, as well as the application of illegal sanctions. All these measures violate international law, the UN Charter, and related Security Council resolutions. The Syrian Arab Republic has officially and frequently raised objections to those violations, calling on the Security Council to halt these violations and put an end to the US occupation. In Iraq, following the unlawful military intervention in 2003, the US and the so-called coalition ignored Iraq's opinion and aspiration and continued illegal activities and presence under the guise of fighting terrorism. The United States and NATO must respect the Iraqi government's decision to terminate their military presence and withdraw their forces from the country. Madam President, all of the resistance groups in the region are independent, and their decisions and actions are motivated by their legitimate rights under international law that are ending the illegal presence of US in their territories.